but the best overall skill player in the Big Ten, without a doubt, Jeremiah Smith. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's surprised here. There's literally no debate. One could even argue that Jeremiah Smith is the greatest player in the country, which I would firmly agree with. The fact that this kid is a true freshman, was called upon in a national championship game to make the most important play of the season the way that he did, and he succeeded confidently, clearly, as easily as he possibly could have, I think is enough evidence that Jeremiah Smith is the best player in the country. I think the scariest part to consider, even though he already looks like he's 25 years old, is that he could get bigger, faster, and stronger. He can continue to develop his footwork and his nuance and become an overall better receiver instead of just being a great athlete. A couple games where he got taken out of those games because defenses were so desperate to slow him down. I think Jeremiah Smith's impact is only going to get bigger and bigger. Anyone who is against Jeremiah Smith is a hack. And it's like, seriously, you can't doubt this kid because there has been nothing but amazing evidence so far.
I'm going to push back on you on one thing. I do think his production can fall. When you're going to a first-time starting quarterback, I do think that you can have situations. By the way, you have a new offensive coordinator and a new DC with a lot of turnover and a lot of different situations. Just because his production could go down, which I think that it can. Joe, you're talking about 16 total touchdowns, over 1,300 total yards, pushing 1,400 total yards, 13 of it coming from receiving. Listen, I'm with you on, I do think he's the best non-quarterback player in the game. I do think that is inevitable. I do think we have to have a conversation about how good of a talent he is versus what we do believe that his production could be going inside of 2025. I do think it drops, okay, because I do still believe overall as a team that they have some stuff to figure out. But what are we talking about? 5% drop-off, 2% drop-off? I don't think it's immense. The kid almost had 20 touchdowns. I mean, he's 4 away from having 20 touchdowns on the entire season. The production, and by the way, being an option early in the season where people say, well, he wasn't our number 2. He was, because Emeka Egbuka and him had the same amount of receptions going into the national title game. Like, it was 1A, 1B for whatever it's worth. I still do I agree with you. I think from a physical standpoint, from an overall athletic standpoint, he reminds me of Julio. He reminds me of Julio.
He's built like him. He's built like him.
I think that is the best comp that you can make. Julio also was not in a passing style offense like this one can be. Again, he could be the best player in the country, and I still think he's the best player in the country, non-quarterback. It will be interesting to see them this year offensively. Now, can Cornell Tate, who's also at number 5 on our list and we'll get to, can he take that next step to take some pressure off of Jeremiah Smith? But I do think that teams are going to force you to throw the ball to other guys like they did in the national title game and like they did against Texas. Make Cornell Tate beat you, which, by the way, Cornell Tate did beat you in some instances. I think that's how you attack it. But I agree with you. Speed, size, strength, hand. The kid has it all. He is what, we call these kids in baseball 5-tool players. He does, at a wide receiver position, he does all 5 things well. Speed, size, height, strength. He has agility. He has all of it. None bigger for me. I know you talked about that Notre Dame play at the end, the long fade down the right sideline. That it wasn't even the most gross play for me because he's beating a dude in single coverage, a free high. The more crazy play for me was when they played Oregon again, and he goes up in double coverage and he's absolutely going off against Oregon, and that was a part of them whipping that ass. The kid is absolutely insane, and I do think he's the best non-quarterback in the country.
I think the thing that you just brought up about his skill set is the craziest part about talking about him, because a lot of times receivers, they play specific roles. There's 3 different roles that you see receivers play: X, Z, play in the slot.
He can do all 3.
Right, he can do all 3. Different body types, different athletic traits, really end up determining how you're going to be playing within an offense. The craziest thing about him is that he literally checks every single box. Like, he is going to be extremely fast in the NFL Combine. He's almost he's basically Calvin Johnson. That's kind of maybe not. It's not as big as Calvin Johnson, but when Julio came in,
Julio's the comp for him.
It is. But the reason why we're talking about all these guys is that they all did everything well, and they were enormous. They were big, strong, physical, had reliable hands, good route runners, and could separate over the top. That is why he's so rare, and that's why he was able to step in and have 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. Here's my only thing, though. I understand your take on his production possibly dropping. I'd flip it back on you, though. Last year, Jeremiah Smith was the number one option, but did not need to be because they had Trevion Henderson, they had Quinshon Judkins, they had Emeka Buka, and they had Carnell Tate, who they did get production out of. This upcoming year, you have a new quarterback. You are a lot more depleted with options. You have to, and you also have the wide receivers coach who's calling plays in Brian Hartline. So you're now in this position where we think you need to rely on Jeremiah Smith in order to produce success. Because I don't know right now who for certain is going to be those next big options outside of Carnell Tate.
All right. I'm still going to stay there because listen, pre-Kelly, what did they do? They would try to run the ball and slow things down. They try to play moderate, good defensive games, and they would slow things down. They're going to have to slow things down and run the football with a new quarterback. Listen, I know that you don't like Will Howard. I know you don't like him. There's a difference of what I think the level of play that you got from him late in the season versus what you can get early. I mean, Joe, you saw a first-time quarterback with Marvin Harrison Jr. in his last year. And what did that beginning of the season production look like? It took a dip. That's not a shot at Jeremiah Smith. What it's a shot at is, Joe, again, the only thing that I could think is maybe they're seeing so much action offensively because you have a new defensive line, you have a new defensive coordinator, so many things that you're trying to replace, and you just get the ball a lot, and you're playing shootouts, and you're trying to throw the ball all over the place. Maybe that does happen. But I'm always cautious when a kid wins a national title, is the best freshman in the country, he has a new starting quarterback, 4 different offensive linemen, 2 new running backs. Oh, by the way, your 1B or 1A, whatever you wanted to call Emeka Buka, is gone. Does Carnell Tate take a step up? Joe, I'm sorry. I don't care if it's Ohio State, Alabama, whoever it is. That is let me just say it like this before Ohio State fans try to kill me.
They're going to get mad at you.
Well, okay. You can't be mad because that shit happened to Saban. And Saban was the best ever. So if it happened to his teams, why do you think that it doesn't happen to you? Now, that's not to say that it will happen to you. There are exceptions to every single rule here. But, Joe, just because one season teaches me something doesn't mean that I have to take it as the norm. Again, what is a drop in production? Joe, listen, there could be a very clear instance where they don't play an extra 4 games or 3 games, and they don't get back to a national title.
Which they probably won't.
They probably won't. So, again, production can come down from less games. It also could come down to, Joe, and I'm just being honest, how does your young quarterback look early, even though I had Julian saying in my top 5? I know we're kind of playing hypothetical here, but it's just the truth.
I just don't agree with this. I think that you've got a guy who steps right in immediately, has an immediate impact. That is a clear indication that the kid's just a natural gifted player. You give him another additional offseason to really take that step forward. I think that we saw this season where he had a couple of instances where his production, where he was completely game planned around. The Texas game was a really good example of this, where the Michigan game, he didn't have his normal production. The Indiana game, he only had 3 receptions for 34 yards. There was a lot of preparation and due diligence from opposing defenses of taking him out of the game plan. And I think that that's not going to change. But I think when you're a true freshman, there's a big difference in how easily you're taken out of a game and the impact that you have now that you've been more established and you've been around a football program for longer. I don't think that that's going to happen as frequently. This kid is too much of an anomaly. He is a rarity.
So just because it's an anomaly and all of that, when Julio went through a new quarterback, his production